نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فنعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فقال الله تعالى في القرآن الكريم وقالوا قلوبنا غلف بل لعنهم الله بكفرهم فقليلا ما يؤمنون صدق الله عليه العظيم. So we are knee deep into this discussion about the ways that kufr manifests itself. And so we had our interesting discussion last week about who should we, or what is our connection with the scholars. But the deeper point being, when we are faced with knowledge that we recognize as being good for us, and we don't want it, how do we respond? And so at the end of Ayah 87, we see three levels of response. One is to respond with arrogance. The second is to respond by accusing the message of being a lie. And then the third, or the messenger of lying. And the third is to resort to violence. So the basic point being that when I am faced with something that I don't want to face, the wrong series of responses is this escalating process. The correct series of responses is just essentially to be honest with yourself and then to make your choices accordingly. Then in Ayah 88, we saw another issue. This is the excuse when someone says our hearts are covered, our hearts are wrapped up. And here we have a very frightening line. لَعْنَهُمُ اللَّهُ بِكُفْرِهِمْ. May the curse of Allah be upon them. For their rejection, they believe very little. And what was some of the discussion that we had from this point? The point is that you are never too deep in wrongdoing to change yourself for the better, or you never have so much knowledge that you really have no more space. This is one of the comments given by scholars to the Prophet, peace be upon him. They said, okay, we have too much knowledge, we have no more space for anything else. But the reality is that they were not practicing their knowledge. Okay, so let's look now at Ayah 89, which we introduced very briefly last time, and this is also touching upon this point of dua. Wait, did we speak about this last time? Well, let's take a look. Okay, وَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ كِتَابٌ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا مَعَهُمْ. And when there comes to them a book or a prescription from Allah confirming what is already with them, وَكَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ يَسْتَفْتِحُونَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. And they used to seek victory over those who rejected. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ مَا عَرَفُوا كَفَرُوا. And so whenever it comes to them, they recognize it and they reject it. Okay? كَفَرُوا بِهِ فَلَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. And so may the curse of Allah be upon those who reject. Okay, so we were speaking about this, actually, now that I remember, last week, about the nature of dua. That this was a population of people seeking victory over the kafirun, seeking victory over the kuffar. Okay? And so what did Allah give them? He gave them the Quran. Okay? What were they probably seeking? They were probably seeking some sort of dominance. Or some sort of like material superiority of that sort. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the Quran, which would have given them all types of different superiority, all types of victory. But they didn't want the Quran. They wanted something huge and from their perspective powerful. So they rejected the Quran. Right? This is why Bani Israel, this is why those particular tribes were in Medina in the first place. They wanted to be there for their prophet. They migrated from their lands to be there for the arrival of the prophet, peace be upon him. And then when it turned out the prophet was Arab, then they rejected him. And this is a point that I've made before, but just to briefly look at it, in Ayah 146 of the same surah, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ. Those to whom we gave the kitab, يَعْرِفُونَهُ. They recognize him, meaning the Prophet, peace be upon him, or they recognize it being the Quran, كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ. As they recognize their own sons. Okay. وَإِنَّ فَرِيقًا مِّنْهُمْ لِيَكْتُمُونَ الْحَقَّ. but they are split about it, and they hide the truth. They conceal the truth, وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ, knowingly. Okay? So what are we saying here? That at the time that the Prophet, peace be upon him, appeared on the scene, these particular scholars recognized him so clearly that it's as clear as they recognized their own sons. And to really make the point about how clearly we recognize our own children, if you're at Hajj and you lose your child and you're looking everywhere for your child, as soon as you see your child, you will recognize your child. One of my students, he even makes the interesting point, he doesn't have any children yet, so he gets fascinated by this. When you're at a party and a baby cries, the parent recognizes immediately, okay, that's my child, right? And that's how clearly these people recognize the Prophet, peace be upon him. Okay. Yes, ma'am? I'm sorry, what does your whole translation say? Oh, up here? Okay, in parentheses, yeah. Yeah, this revelation is an interpretation of the pronoun who, which is literally they recognize him. So him can refer to the Prophet, peace be upon him, or it can refer to the book, the Quran. Right? And so this translator specifically says this revelation. Yeah. But the deeper point is that it's not very easy to separate the Prophet, peace be upon him, from the Quran. Right? On paper we can. This is the Quran, this is the Hadith. But in terms of action, it's not as easy to separate the two. Okay? Because the Quran is essentially the biography of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Okay. So what is the point? What is the point for our benefit there? I mean, it's easy to say, okay, look, those people recognize that this is the Prophet, peace be upon him, but they rejected him. Okay, that doesn't really give us very much benefit. It just gives us sort of an excuse to feel better about ourselves. The deeper issue is, again, that when you are praying for something, what are you really seeking? You know, just like I was having a conversation earlier today with some undergrads, and the point I made to them is that when you are praying for Allah to give you an A on your exam, what are you really seeking? Are you seeking the A? Are you seeking more confidence? Are you going to get accepted into your school, your med school, or what have you? Or are you concerned you don't want your parents to be upset with you? You want your parents to be happy with you, right? What are you really seeking when you're making dua? Okay. Because as I made the point last week, the more I look back on my life, the more it seems like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered every prayer. Just not the way I asked for it. Right? But what I was seeking in those moments of prayer, going all the way back to when I was 5 years old, maybe even younger, it seems like everything got answered. Right? And I do believe that if we all look back at our lives, we would see that to be true for ourselves more often than we might realize. Right? Maybe in the moment then we're making dua, we might feel like, okay, where's the answer? Where is it? Right? But looking 10 years later and back, then it might be surprising by how many things actually played out, you know, for in the way, or not necessarily in the way we asked for, but we got what we were seeking. So this now brings us to ayah 90, which sums up one of the basic reasons why people behave the way they behave. We saw one earlier, which was in ayah, I think, 86. Why do people behave the way they behave in ayah 6? Sometimes people buy the life of this world at the cost of the hereafter. Right? We choose, sometimes people, a'udhu billah, we choose this life instead of the hereafter. Okay? So in that moment we feel like this life is the real life and the hereafter is not as real. But then we see another issue, ayah 90. Okay, in fact, rather than go through the Arabic piece by piece, this translation says, evil is that for which they sell their souls, that they should disbelieve in that which Allah has revealed, grudging that Allah should reveal of His bounty unto whom He will of His bondmen. They have incurred anger upon anger, and for these disbelievers there is a shameful doom. So let's take this, let's try to make sense of this piece by piece. Okay, evil is that for which they have sold their souls. Now this translator puts a colon here, okay, that he's going to explain what is the evil. But think about this in terms of one simple point. We had a discussion way back in the very first volume, the first class, that the key to misguidance was what? Does anybody remember? What's the key to misguidance? This is all the way back at ayah 26 and 27 of Al-Baqarah. Even before that, the key to misguidance is misconduct. Right? that if I engage in misconduct, that is opening the pathway to misguidance. The default relationship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has with everyone is guidance. In fact, let's just for review, let's actually look at those ayahs really briefly. Okay. So, back in Ayah 26 and 27, at the end of Ayah 26, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He misguides many by this, and He guides many by this. Okay, and what is this? This can refer either to the Quran, or can refer to just this metaphor. And then at the very end of Ayah 26, He does not misguide anyone except for the fasiqeen, except for the fasiqs. Okay? And how do we define fasiq? A fasiq is someone who has these boundaries and they cross over beyond the boundaries, right? They're rebels. Okay? And then Ayah 27 identifies the attributes of the fasiqs. Number one, they break their pact with Allah after having confirmed it. Number two, they split what Allah has ordered to be joined. And number three, they make mischief in the earth. Right there, Ayah 27. They break the pact with Allah after having confirmed it. Number two, they split what Allah has ordered to be joined. And number three, they make mischief in the earth. These people are losers. So Allah does not misguide anyone except for these people. And to sum up, what are these three behaviors? One is they break their relationship with Allah. Two, they break their relationship with people. Three, they break their relationship with the earth. Right? They corrupt their relationship with Allah, they corrupt their relationship with each other, and they corrupt their relationship with the earth. So the relationship with God, the relationship with society or their family, and the relationship with the earth. When you break these, when you corrupt these, through misguidance, this is the pathway, or through misconduct, this is the pathway to misguidance. Okay. Okay. So bringing us back to where we are here in Ayah 90, one point that is motivating misbehavior or disbelief is essentially wrong action. Okay? When you are selling off your soul for evil. Okay? But here there's something even deeper. Okay? They reject what Allah has revealed because of a grudge. That Allah reveals His bounty to whomever He wills. Okay? This is essentially sort of like jealousy. Okay? Now, have you ever found yourself in the situation, perhaps we all have, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you something wonderful, okay? But He's given someone else the same thing? Okay? Or, just maybe even simpler jealousy, that Allah has given someone else something and you wanted something. Right? But Allah gave it to someone else. Here we also have that in matters of guidance. Okay? That these people feel upset that Allah is giving His bounty. His bounty can be read two ways. One is guidance, the other way is just actual wealth to other people. Okay? So think about this. This is the behavior of jealousy. And I was listening to a lecture by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and he was making the point, based on a novel, that people will admit to stealing or other crimes before they'd admit to jealousy. Right? That it's harder to admit to jealousy than it is to even some big crimes, right? Just in terms of... Sometimes it's probably because they don't feel it's because of jealousy, and I think sometimes, well, what do you think? Why? Why is it harder to admit to jealousy than to other crimes?
It's very childlike.
Yeah, we might associate jealous behavior with behaving like a child. You know, yeah. Yeah, so related to your point, maybe they don't realize that they're being jealous. Yeah, you know. Sometimes we even hide the fact that we're jealous even from ourselves. Yeah, definitely. Yes, ma'am.
I guess revealing you're jealous reveals you're weaker or lesser in some way.
Yeah. That jealousy is very much a weak type of character. Well, what do you think? Would be easier to admit that you stole something, or you're jealous of somebody? Or you stole because you're jealous? Yeah. Yeah, all of the above. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But in any case, the point here is that they're jealous that Allah is giving His bounty to whomever He wills. So there's another subtle point even deeper here. And we have this conversation quite a bit when we talk about reform of Islam and so forth and so on, that a lot of times, a lot of the so-called reformers of Islam, what are they essentially trying to do? They're trying to fit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a box. Okay. In terms of, I'm sorry?
I said that's a good analysis.
Okay, Jazakallah. One of the challenges of the believer is to embrace this idea that Allah does whatever He wills, that He gives to whomever He wills. But what you also understand is that Allah will also take care of you. Okay? I mean, Allah's bounty is infinite, so if He is giving to someone else, don't worry, it's not like He's going to run out. Right? Okay. Yes, sir.
Maybe this is taking another topic.
Fire away.
At what point in time did Bani Israel or the Jews of that time, or the Jews pre-prophet, get the idea of your chosen people? Obviously, you have that idea, and then all of a sudden you're shown you're not chosen. The natural response would be jealousy.
I think that's a really, really wonderful point. I don't know where the tradition of being chosen came in. That's actually something I can try to look up to see if I can find out. But yeah, especially if you're being taught that you're something special, and then Allah gives something to someone else, then that seems to even contradict what you've been taught. Yeah, it's a very important point. So what are we saying here? At one level, why are people rejecting? Because of misconduct. They're choosing evil over good conduct. And then deeper than that, why are they rejecting? It is essentially because of jealousy. Okay? That okay, Allah is taking care of that person, then a'udhu billah, then fine, I'm going to turn away from Allah. Okay? This is the case, you've heard this from me before, this is the case of a lot of atheists. A lot of atheists, it's not so much that they disbelieve in the existence of Allah, they're essentially trying to punish Allah. You know, why did this happen to me? So my way to so to speak, get back at Allah is to say Allah doesn't exist, right? To ignore Allah, right? I completely disagree.
They don't believe in personified God who takes sides for one people or another. That's how it's hard for them to understand.
I mean, this is true for some, but literally 100% of those who have converted to atheism that I've met, their arguments have never ever been sophisticated. The deeper issue has always been a broken heart. Yeah. There are others. Now, this is a distinction from those people who are raised as atheists, right? But in terms of those who sort of convert into atheism, I've never found a single person who is a sophisticated thinker.
Who's dying now in London, Hitchens?
Yeah, he just passed away. Yeah, if you look at Hitchens' arguments, they're not very strong at all. Yeah, I don't think so. Hitchens, Dawkins, Bill Maher, I don't think any of them prevent any sophisticated arguments. Nietzsche gives some really strong arguments, right? Some of these older philosophers, but these contemporary pundits, I think, I mean, what is their core argument? Like, Hitchens' core argument is that if you believe, you have to be dumb to believe in religion. Right, and then the way he argues is, look at all these absurd behaviors. But we would agree that all those absurd behaviors are all crazy. You know, we would agree with those too, right? Dawkins' argument is a little bit better. He makes this point, for example, that we're so caught up in looking for miracles that we lose sight of the beauty and complexity of everything that's right in front of us, which is a point we've even discussed in this class, right? But he's very patronizing in the sense that, you know, he also says essentially you have to be dumb to believe in religion, right? You know? I think that's a stereotype that the religious people keep fighting with each other. I think an honest assessment would be that the religious people, most of the religious people you'll ever meet, are good, humble people. Whatever religion it is, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, I think an honest assessment shows that the overwhelming majority are very, very good people, right? But when we look in the news, I'm sorry? Yeah, I mean, that does happen. I think we can just name 5 masjids in Chicago within a 20-mile radius where there's all kinds of fights, right? I mean, that's also true, but yeah.
A lot of people, majority of humanity would say, hey, these people are fighting all the time, this and that, and most of the wars, that's what they say, is most of the wars are because of religion.
Sure, but
they said, without religion, we will eat each other alive.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that point, yeah. I don't know if we'd eat each other, but we probably would. Yeah. But yeah, your point is taken. Meaning religion also gives us very civilized behavior too. Yeah.
Your counter-argument to that is that most of the people who've been killed over the course of warfare were not killed for religious reasons. There were more wars historically.
Sure.
The most deaths occurred in the 20th century, and those were all political and had very little to do, if anything to do with religion.
And atomic bombs is not in the Bible, but you how to make atomic bomb.
Yeah, I don't think it is. Hopefully it's not. Yeah.
There's nothing in any book.
Sure.
Religious book how to make these guns. They're just manufacturing more bombs.
Yeah, sure.
So it's a human nature.
Yeah.
Define religious person.
That's a really good question. I mean, just defining what we mean by religious person. That would be a good, fun discussion for today. We had a fun discussion last week. How about a fun discussion today? How would? Yeah, this is
Somebody like you and me.
Yeah, this is a tough question because my students ask me if I'm religious. Okay, and in my mind, my parents are religious. Right. Okay, and my parents are more religious than me.
I think you are. Mufti, I'm going to ask you a fatwa about something which I don't know.
Okay. Well, don't ask me when the camera's on. But I mean, for example, for decades, my father has been going to the masjid 5 times a day. Right. So in my mind, that's a religious person. Right. So I'm just a joker who people listen to. Yeah.
Religious and spirituality.
I'm sorry?
There's also a difference between religious and spirituality.
I agree. Explain it further. Because we do have a conversation. A lot of people say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
Right. Sometimes religion has to do with the rituals, and spirituality has to do with the goodness and the soul.
And the consciousness. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think it's very difficult to define whether someone is religious or not, right?
A lot of times, the more intellectual you are, it seems like in modern society, you're more spiritual, but you're not religious.
Sure, yeah.
Because, like what you just said, a lot of times people feel like if you're an atheist or if you're too religious, you're relying on something sort of a crutch.
Yeah, sure. We find that a lot. I'd say very frequently that intellectual types are not as caught up in or not as involved in the ritual practices. You're raising your hand. Fire away. I mean,
religious without any demands.
sure.
And
That's what it is for a lot of people.
The core of it is kind of an arrogance, You think other people are, silly to follow that, or you think that you know better, so you have a direct relationship with God, and you have to submit to what it is.
This is also an important point. That some people who define themselves as spiritual but not religious might actually be speaking out of sort of an arrogance. Yeah, definitely. This is why it's really important that when scholars speak about so-called Islamic spirituality, whether we use tazkiyah or haqiqah, or even like controversial terms like Sufis and such, the Orthodox scholars say that you have to start with Sharia, right? That the teachers who bypass Sharia, you have to be careful. Yeah.
I wouldn't say those are equivalent translations.
I agree. They're not equivalent translations. Yeah.
Spiritual people who don't practice their religion.
Okay.
By the same token, I mean, children are innocent and they're definitely very spiritual, but they have no concept of...
That's a very nice point. Yeah. So the problem we're raising is essentially just the term spiritual, right? And so one way we might be defining spiritual.
They're spiritual, but that's it.
Because they're true to their nafs. I mean, they don't go against their nafs.
No, but they mimic everything they do. They're
Okay.
really trainable.
Okay.
In that, they don't just walk around in like robes. They
Okay.
actually follow what you do.
Yeah, sure.
Right, but by the same token, 2 or 3-year-olds are going to go kill somebody because they want another 12-year-old child.
We kill another kid for it.
Okay. Now the discussion is getting very strange. Okay. So, but the basic point being that, in terms of defining what it means to be religious, what am I meaning in the most simple sense? Someone who is what society would recall as a religious person. So society, generally speaking, would call my father and me, my mother and my father, me, all my sisters, because we do religious type things, right? Outside of work. Right? Well, in my case, it's also work.
Pray 5 times a day, and majority of them are not getting any closer to any common standard, very basic things of human society.
What does that mean?
To open up to talk to somebody or something of a decent behavior or something. They're caught up in this ritual thing, not participating in broader society, at least for knowledge's sake. Or something.
But I would disagree. The majority are not doing that. I mean, because the people who are praying 5 times a day all do participate in society as employees and as workers, right? If you're speaking about reaching out into other communities, I think most people of any sort don't do that, religious or non-religious, right? I think just a very minority of people do that. But, I mean, by virtue of the fact that we all have jobs automatically means that we're participating in society. Now, if you're speaking of someone who is praying and then they're running a liquor store, okay, that's a really serious problem. Or they're praying and they're committing crime. Yeah, then, but I don't think you're talking about that. Yeah.
I think when you look at the world country, the people,
Uh-huh.
I called a professor friend and he was laughing, and I said, what's the prayer? He says, I was telling this guy, send to the school. He said, I don't want to make another Zafar of that time. I like
Okay.
it.
Okay, I don't know what that
I
means.
said, I've been 40 years out of the
Okay.
country. Why they remember me now?
Okay. Why do they remember you? Is it class conversation or participation? Or?
No, but the interesting point is he says he made 2 of his son Hafiz al-Quran.
Okay, mashallah.
One is in jail.
Subhanallah.
Karachi, he was for printing the notes,
Okay. Yeah.
counted thing.
Subhanallah.
And the other one was cutting woods on the roadside, which belonged to the government.
Okay.
And he's in jail here.
Subhanallah.
And he said, I was laughing to see where he is and where there, the children are.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about.
Sure. I mean, we do have many examples of people who are supposedly pious, but they do all kinds of very wrong things. Yeah, I'd agree. But I still think that the majority of people who behave in any sort of pious behavior tend to be upright people, right?
But they put themselves in a little box.
Sure.
And that's the tragedy of human mind. It's such a capacity to learn.
Okay.
They cannot come out of the little cocoon. That's what
It
I'm
happens,
wondering.
but I think there's lots of other reasons. Yes.
I just want to ask the brother if those Hafiz, if they went to masjid 5 times a day,
What do you think? Do you know that those two criminal guys did they go to the masjid 5 times a day?
Definitely they were Hafiz al-Quran.
Probably.
They did that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the word, the bigger word is also your life. That's
Sure.
where you live your life
Sure.
and you got to learn, you got to grow.
Sure.
And if you don't grow, then you're going to be doing these things because tomorrow you're raising your family, your children need money. You got to have a minimum of something to meet the standard of society. If you don't have fees for the doctors or something, you cannot take your children, and yet you have a very good mind that you could memorize the book.
Sure. So,
So
but
you have a very big capacity to learn.
so I mean, the point you're making is that we should continuously be learning and expanding our horizons. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So in the case of this ayah, we were saying there's a few levels. One level is the level of misconduct. A deeper level of misguidance or the action misguidance is jealousy, and then a deeper level is simply anger. Look at jealousy as a behavior of anger. We spoke about this long time ago when we were speaking about Al-Fatiha, when we were asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us on the straight path, the path of those whom He has favored. One of our conversations was that, we had a few conversations on it, but one of the conversations was that we are asking Allah, guide me to see my life as favors. Okay? غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ, not to be like those on whom is anger. And one of the points we were making is that gratitude and anger are the opposites of each other. That gratitude and anger cannot exist in the same heart. One will win. I think the reason you were asking if the two criminal Hafiz guys were praying is because we have the narrations of those people who they were praying, they were making their prayers, and then one was going out being a bandit, another one was out drinking, and the Prophet said, peace be upon him, maybe one will win over the other. And in their cases, the salah won over the misconduct, but in this case, the misconduct won over the salah. So a deeper point here is that the key to misguidance and misconduct is anger. Okay. Much of our deen, we kind of overlook it, is speaking about the contrast between gratitude and anger. Okay. That if I have anger in my heart, there's some good anger. There are cases where the Prophet, peace be upon him, was angry. But generally speaking, if I have anger in my heart, what does anger do? It perpetuates itself and it tries to spread to more anger. Okay. غضب على غضب. Okay. Right. And as we know, in our Muslim subculture, as well as our greater American society, anger is a very serious problem. Right? Anger is, like we said before, anger is like fire. Okay? And how does fire survive? By burning more and more and more.
Jealousy.
Yeah, and so jealousy becomes a form of anger. Yes.
In this case, because I'm looking at my translations, I'm
Yeah.
talking about anger upon anger from Allah.
So read this as a few things. One, anger upon anger in terms of their own anger spreading, but what would be the response be from Allah if you are responding to Allah's favors with anger? This would be the wrath of Allah. I just don't like using that because it's hard to speak about the wrath of Allah. But we have that literally like just a few ayahs earlier, right? I think it's in this ayah that basically they have the anger of Allah upon them. I don't see it here, but I think it's right here somewhere. But yeah. So keep this point in mind that a core problem, a core key to misguidance is the problem of anger. How do you fix it?
How do you fix it? Charity
Well,
something that you know you're in trouble. You have done something wrong, or doing something against yourself or the society or whatever. You have to give charity to lighten up yourself.
so in terms of the cures we've seen so far, the major cure we've seen so far is by gratitude, right? Okay.
Which is a very difficult word to understand. It has subtle meaning. It has a broader picture of gratitude and stuff like that.
But I think we all know gratitude, though. Like, I mean, you know gratitude when you feel gratitude. You know.
Words have very potential.
Sure. I mean, that's always true, but. But I mean, but the point you're making is that you would have to give and give and give, and that I would agree with as a cure for illnesses of the heart. But in terms of the basic cure for anger, think of gratitude as being like water and anger being like fire.
Is it the zikr of Allah?
That would be another, and specific remembrances of Allah, right? But the key remembrance that I'm speaking about, the key remembrance of Allah that I'm speaking about is gratitude.
Gratitude.
So gratitude of Allah is a type of dhikr of Allah. Well, in terms of what specifically to say, if you can honestly say Alhamdulillah, because that's a statement of gratitude to Allah. And if that's difficult, you make the dua, oh Allah, guide me to be grateful. Right? Yeah, absolutely. So think about this ayah if we look at it in terms of reverse order. Okay, but the last point here is that for the people who reject, there is this shameful or this painful doom. Okay? But look at this in reverse order. The starting point is anger, and it spreads to anger upon anger. And then how does that manifest itself further? In terms of one of the ways is through jealousy. Allah is giving that person something that I want. Okay? That's a behavior of anger. And then what is above that? And then that leads to misconduct. Like when we have the wrong type of anger, why do we get angry? Because something's working not the way we want it to work. Right? Something is not working properly. So sometimes my way of implementing justice is to become angry if I feel justice is not being served or fairness is not being served. Okay? So yeah. Okay. And then it goes further. Ayah 91. When it is said to them, believe. So when they are told to believe in what Allah has sent down, what do they say? We believe in what has been sent down on us, but we reject everything else that comes after it. Okay? Even though وَهُوَ الْحَقُّ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا مَعَهُمْ, even though it is the truth confirming what they have. Right? Again, we've spoken about what are the relationships that the Quran has with the previous books. One is that the Quran is confirming their book. Another is their book is confirming the Quran. Okay? What do you mean? So in this context, primarily we're speaking about the Bible, about the Torah in particular. Right? Yeah.
When you hear something and somebody else comes and tell you the same thing, suppose somebody says somebody was murdered,
Sure.
and then somebody else comes along and says,
Sure.
then it confirms. Because the first place you have some sort of a notion or something, then it becomes a belief, and you
Sure.
find it somewhere else.
This is exactly the point here. You know, that they have it and now it's being confirmed. It's coming from another source. Absolutely. Okay.
It's that the Quran may be talking about the Bible.
Potentially. Yeah.
That's
Like you've heard it here, and here we're showing it to you also. Yeah, definitely. Now, what is the response? Okay, so this group of people is saying, we will believe in what has been revealed to us. We're not believing in anything after that, even though it's confirming the truth. Then you say, then why did you kill the prophets before? If you were believers. Okay. Which prophet? Yahya, alayhi salam, right? Now, who is this conversation to? This conversation is to the scholars. Okay? Not so much to the lay people. Not so much to the common people. Okay? But what is the deeper point here? Okay? If I say, for example, I'm just going to believe in this book but nothing else, then the test is, okay, are you actually acting according to that book? If I say I'm just going to believe in the Quran and nothing else, then the test is, okay, are you actually acting upon the Quran? Okay. In my life so far, I have never met a Quran-only person, meaning people who reject Hadith, a Quran-only person, who actually seems to be practicing it. Okay. I've met many Hadith people, fiqh people, who seem to also be practicing the Quran. Okay. I've never met a Quran-only person who seems to actually be practicing it. Okay. So that makes me think it's more of just an academic argument that people are giving. But here's the basic challenge. If you're saying we only believe in this, then are you actually practicing it? For you and I, this is a conversation we'll probably never have. Okay? But as a conversation between groups, okay? Especially when there's criticism from one side to the other, like an interfaith criticism going back and forth. The question is, are you actually practicing what your beliefs say? It's just like the point that you made, that you have these hafizes that have memorized the Quran and then they're committing crime, right? Are you even practicing, what your book is saying? Were you making a point? No? Okay, yeah. Okay, sir.
I had a question that's sort of...
It's not far away.
In their tradition, do they acknowledge that they killed Hazrat Yahya or let's say maybe he's a false prophet or whatever?
Sure. That I used to know the answer, but I don't remember anymore. That I'll have to look up. Do you know?
Why they killed Yahya?
Is it looked at in the tradition that they killed John the Baptist? It is generally agreed upon that he was killed.
They say the lady who danced in front of who was that king. She basically asked him on behalf of her mother.
Yeah, I don't remember if it's like a central story. This is something else I have to look up. Yeah.
Right.
But I think that's more about Jesus, not John.
No, but Isa was also saying, "You killers of prophets."
Yeah. But
this is in the gospel, not the epistles in the gospel.
Okay, I'll have to research this some more.
The only thing is, obviously, if it's being addressed that way, then maybe it was a common part of their tradition that they did that. If it wasn't, then they're going to make the argument that, well, we never claimed to do that.
Well, what you're raising is a different question here. The different question here is that when this material is being given, does that apply to the Jews of today? Right?
Right. No, I'm wondering if it applied to them at that time.
At the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. I'm guessing if this is there, then it probably applied at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. My suspicion, though, is that when we speak of the Jews of today, a lot of this stuff does not apply. Right? Especially in terms of what's being described as the behavior of Bani Israel versus Yahud. Right? In a lot of this, we're speaking of Bani Israel, children of Israel. And the point that we were making at the beginning was, that when we think of Bani Israel, think of them as Bani Israel, not the same as Jews.
Plural, you killers of prophets.
Well, this is, in the history of Christianity, there is some deep-seated anti-Semitism that goes all the way back to that theology, right? It's only recently that Christians, in terms of Christian authorities, have turned away from that. But, when we speak of anti-Semitism among Muslims, it doesn't compare to the anti-Semitism from Christians against Jews, right? And a lot of it starts from that point, this notion that Jews are Christ killers, right? I've seen it even in my classes. People who are 18 years old, or people who are 60 years old, will resort to that, right? And it always shocks me.
Even now, the evangelists, don't they believe that Jesus will come and kill me?
Yeah, in terms of the politics of Israel, I mean, the biggest Zionist movement is the Christian Zionist movement, and even though in terms of their tongues they claim to love Jews, I doubt that too many of them actually have any love for Jews. That's why I get very, very cautious about publicly criticizing Israel, because when we're criticizing Israel, it's because of criticism of the state and the treatment of the Palestinians, right? When a lot of Christians are criticizing Israel, the right-wing Christians, well, actually, you don't find that very much, but when that happens, it's anti-Semitism that's the fuel, right? And we have to distinguish between those two. Yeah.
It's basically herding the cattle to the slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
That's what they're-
Yeah.
The Christian Zionists.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what they are essentially, their belief is herd the cattle to
Yeah. I think.
When he comes, we will see, let us have the
Yeah,
benefit.
give us the land
But
anyhow.
I mean, we have to be especially cautious in this political climate about criticism of Jews, not because of Jewish authority or power, but because when right-wing Christians historically have been in power, they wipe out the Jews and Muslims, right? Whether we speak of the Inquisition or other things. Yeah. As opposed to left-wing Christians who tend to focus very much on justice. Yeah. Okay, so I'll have to look at that in terms of how that applies. But in terms of our usage, at least at the very core, is that, all right, if I claim that I believe in this, then do my actions reveal otherwise? Okay. Yes, ma'am?
Lost in the timeline. Is this still Bani Israel, or is this...
This is all still Bani Israel, but not necessarily at the time of Moses, peace be upon him. So.
It seems like contemporaries of
So the conversation is Allah is speaking to the contemporaries of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, about events from 1,000 years prior. Right. So this goes back to the question of narrative that we might have discussed like in the first or second class. I don't remember exactly. Or this might have been the previous volume.
Yeah, I can't refer to any other faiths or belief systems as particularly this precursor.
The question being, it can't refer to anyone else. In terms of just the context itself, and in terms of the history of the commentary, it seems to specifically refer to this one group. Yeah. But, what we're doing here is to try to universalize it. Right. Because it's very easy for us to read these narratives and say, look, those people are bad, but that doesn't give us any benefit, right? I mean, what is the benefit for us, for example, in this ayah? If I'm claiming to believe in something, then do my actions show that I really believe in it? Yeah. Yes, sir?
So the next verse saying, you know what, and Moses came unto you.
Yeah.
So essentially it's referring to Bani Israel.
So here, I'm saying this whole section is Bani Israel, right? Absolutely. I mean, back to the point of narrative, and what do I mean by narrative? Your story. That when we are reading the biography of the Prophet, peace be upon him, I don't think we feel that when he is getting attacked that we are getting attacked, okay? Or that when he is doing something, that's us who's doing it, okay? But the narrative that's being used here is that you did this, you did this, you did this, and you find this in this narrative, right? And this is very much I do think you find this in popular Jewish tradition today. This notion that we are one community today, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. That is all us. For us Muslims, it's not so much the same way. It's a different philosophy, right? So when we speak of the Turks, we don't really speak of them, or as though that's us. Or when we speak of the Mughals, we don't really speak of as though that's us, right? It could be the fact that our community is so big. Yeah, that's probably a big part of it. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Okay. So bring us to ayah 92. Okay. And when Moses came to you with clear proofs, okay, yet while you were away, you took to the calf, and you were wrongdoers. A very, very simple ayah. Okay? And we're going to see more about it, especially in the next ayah 93. But again, why did they go to the calf? There's a couple understandings here. One understanding is that this is what was the common religion or religious practice around them, so they're trying to mimic the people who are around them. In fact, I think Brother Hussein had a number of really, really good explanations. But the bottom line is that shortly after they were freed, Musa alayhi salam goes away for 40 days, and so their leaders start misguiding them. They start making this calf out of gold, just like in the movie, right? But what does this do? وَأَنْتُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. This word dhulum, which is literally translated as darkness or making darkness, Deeper than this is you are oppressors, and deeper than that you are oppressors against who? Against yourself. You know? That when you are doing wrong, you are making oppression against yourself. Okay? And this is also a very, very important point. What leads to misbehavior? When you take something else as an ilah other than Allah, your actions are all going to follow accordingly. So we speak about iman billah, right? Faith in Allah. Jihad fi sabilillah. Okay? Jihad in the way of Allah. Whatever I take as an ilah, I'm going to have iman in that ilah, right? So if I have iman in alcohol, or if I take alcohol, I have such a relationship with alcohol that it becomes my God, I'm going to start having iman in alcohol. I'm going to start doing jihad fi sabili alcohol, right? And then we see what happens in ayah 93. So what am I saying here? That when we are saying la ilaha illallah, we're saying you don't take anything as an ilah but Allah, but you will feel compelled to take something. So you take Allah as your ilah. So what do people take in our society? They might take money as their ilah. They might take alcohol as their ilah. They might take nationalism as their ilah. They might take drugs as their ilah. They might take statues as their ilah. So many things. But then there's another consequence, ayah 93. So when we made the pact with you, raising the mountain above you, saying, hold tight to what we have given you, hold tight to it with strength, and listen. Okay? They said, sami'na wa asayna. We listen and we disobey. Okay? So they made this pact, and how do they respond? We listen and we disobey. Why? Okay? Because the love of the calf was deep in their hearts. Okay? So what are we saying here? That if you have that level of love that you're supposed to have for Allah, if you have it for something else, your whole morality is going to work accordingly. Okay? So let me help make some more sense of this. We know those hadith narrations when someone would come to the Prophet and say, you know, A'udhu billah, I committed zina, and then I did this and this and this. And how would the Prophet respond? Okay. What's the first thing he would do? Like a woman says, okay, I did zina, and then I had a child, and then I buried the child, and so forth and so on. When the woman, or in other cases the man, would say something, what's the first thing the Prophet would do? Even before saying ask for forgiveness, he would turn his head. Right? Why? I'm sorry? So it could be that you know he didn't want to get into that discussion because that would get into a conversation on punishment. I'm saying it's an even simpler point that if you have this connection with Allah, then those things that are beautiful will attract you, and those things that are repulsive will automatically, as a reflex, turn you away. Right? Okay. Now, if you are someone who is now getting attracted to wrong things, then wrong things will attract you, and beautiful things will, and healthy things will turn you away. Just like, you know, the case you have with someone who's an alcoholic, right? The alcoholic will drink so much alcohol that he or she will start looking to it for nutrition. And if you try to give that person fruit or milk, they'll spit it up. And this is what's happening here. That they have developed such a love for the calf that when Allah is giving them instructions, they turn away from it. It repulses them. Okay? Just like way back when, at the early on in the surah, this is ayah 17 and 18. We had the metaphor. Okay, the likeness of these people, the hypocrites and the kafirs, this is in ayah 17 and 18, is like the likeness of, you have a man who is kindling a fire, the light goes everywhere, and then Allah takes their light away, leaving them in darkness. And how did we explain this back then? We said that the guidance of the Prophet, peace be upon him, was actually causing them darkness. Okay? And we talked about the dua that we make to Allah. Oh Allah, make easy for me what is halal, and make hard for me what is haram. And what are we saying even deeper than that? We're saying, oh Allah, please make the halal things appealing for me. Please make them tasty for me. And please make the haram things repulsive for me. Okay? So as you more and more make Allah your exclusive ilah, then those things that Allah says are upright, you're naturally going to be attracted to them. And the things that He says are bad and harmful are for you, you are naturally going to be repulsed by them. You're going to find them filthy. Okay? But on the flip side, if you have something else, then you're going to be attracted to the filthy, and you might be repulsed by the beautiful and the clean. Okay? So this is another thing that happened to this population that we're speaking about. The love for the calf started permeating through their veins. Right? It got so deep in their heart, so that when Allah gave them something, they say, we hear and we reject. Okay. It's
So
kind of,
it says their bad deeds are fair seeming to them.
yeah, exactly. So they do bad and it seems good to them. Yeah. Yes, sir.
In a previous ayah, take it makes sense.
I'm sorry?
In a previous ayah,
Okay, so those who worship the calf, then they were told to slaughter themselves. Sure, but apparently it was so deep, right? In fact, in terms of the chronology here, that I'd have to find out, right? When did all this fit together? Yeah, that's an important question. So what does it say at the end of this ayah? Evil is what your belief enjoins upon you if you're a believer. So whatever it is you say you believe in, it's evil. Okay? What is the point? That if I take something as an ilah, I'm constructing a whole religious view from it. My iman in this thing, my iman, a'udhu billah, in the calf. Jihad in the way of the calf. So if I take alcohol as my ilah, I have iman in alcohol. I do jihad in the way of alcohol. Right? Yeah? Yeah, translate for everybody.
The shaitan has made them glorified, or
Yeah, or they feel these things are beautiful for them.
made
Yeah?
them look good
Yeah?
to them.
Yeah?
وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُم.
Yeah?
It's very true. You look at it, and people have accidents left and right, and it's horrible times. The traffic and all, and yet people will drink. Simple cough medication will make you sleepy. And yet there are families that are going to churches that are all over just to pass through 10 red lights, and I want to have alcohol here.
Yeah.
You cannot stop them.
Yeah, it's
Alcohol help. I call it alcohol help.
Cool.
It sounds more like alcohol sounds. It's an Arabic word, basically.
Yeah. So. Explain further.
Well, when you do not ask directly from Allah, going bypassing or using a whole focus is that.
Next question. Okay. So the question being that, all right, if I go through some pious person as a way to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that the same thing here? The risk is there, yeah. Right. If I'm clear about the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the source, then it's a stronger protection. But if I'm looking at this person as having a special connection with Allah that I don't have, and then I go through this person, and whether they're alive or dead, or so if they're dead, and if I feel powerless, if I don't go through them, then I'd say that's a very serious problem. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know who. I have never met a people because I believe that, not that Basira, but the Muslims have a certain relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Sure.
And when I go to those mazar, I don't pray to them, I'm praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
But you're praying to Allah. Yeah.
I'm praying to Allah. And other people do, but unless there are, like if you go to Azhar Sharif, there are a lot of Hindus. I mean,
Sure.
they are praying to them.
Yeah, sure.
You know, the Johara maybe. But that's
Sure.
normal people.
Sure.
Isn't that similar to what's in like Christianity?
Well,
Not saying they think they are God. Here, with the Muslims go, then it's not that we are praying to, like,
Sure.
this is a a place and a masjid and a grave of
of a pious person. Yeah.
pious person.
Sure.
Just go there and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Sure. And
See that like that.
and if you're praying to Allah, inspired by the piety of this person, I think that's fine.
If some Muslim come and I say,
Sure.
make dua for me.
Sure.
I ask everybody to make dua. Hamare
Sure.
dua kariye.
Absolutely. When you're asking other people to make dua for you.
I think the Salafis are making a little bit complicated.
Yeah, Salafis do a lot of funny things, but yeah.
This is from the heart of
Yeah. No, but the simple test is, how do you feel when you're away from that? If you feel that you're powerless and vulnerable, then that's where I think that illustrates the process. Okay, we had a couple points. You, and then you. Yes.
In the context of this verse, were they literally worshipping the cow, or were they using it as an intercessor?
Were they literally worshiping the calf or taking it as an intercessor? In terms of that distinction, that I'd have to find out. I don't remember exactly. Because the question becomes, is that any different? Hey, Hussein, Brother Hussein. When the Bani Israel took to the calf, did it reach the point of worship?
I know the biblical account.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah, I don't remember exactly. Yeah. Sure.
When people say, like in Pakistan, so basically Pakistani culture, like people, we go to like sayings and sometimes you go to like some pious person and he writes a small paper, he writes something and give it to you and tell you like it will protect you, it will be better, and you do something like that, and even your family, everybody pressurizes you. It's from a special person. I mean, you need to use that. I mean, is that something like a person like?
Okay, so when you go to some special sheikh type person, with some need, and they write for you something on a paper, usually it is some sort of dua, right, or some specific ayahs, right, or something along those lines, and then they instruct you to give it to you. Sometimes it's done, especially for people who need help with their faith. I mean, what do you think? What do you think, Hussein? No.
That is the dua from the Quran. That's what they write. People who go, they can't read them. Otherwise, they will tell you. Like if I go, they will tell me recite this dua, recite this namaz. But if somebody like who can't read or anything, for them they write it and say, when you go to pillow or just keep it here.
I wouldn't call it a wrong action, but it's the same thing. If your dependence on that, if you feel vulnerable without it, then it's a thing for concern, right? But usually,
it's all coming from not from Islam or from more Hindu culture.
In terms of its source, that's harder to say.
Where is it coming from?
Do you know? Like things like those. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But not the Hindus, don't blame for Hindus.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of things that we blame on Hindus, I don't think are actually coming from Hindus. Yeah.
Because we don't see that in Arab countries.
No, but the point is we do in every corner of the Muslim world. Yeah.
And also,
Ellen Watts, the Harvard professor, the guy used to have experiments with LSD.
Okay.
And he heard about it in India. There's a guru, and he took a whole bunch of LSD.
Okay.
And the guru came to know he was a real person, genuine person.
Okay.
And the guru asked him, "Give me that stuff, that gift that you brought for me." He says, "Here's the gift."
Okay.
The guru swallowed it.
The whole thing of LSD.
The whole thing.
Okay.
And this guy's looking at his watch. Half hour passed, 1 hour passed. And the guy fell on his feet. He says, "Change my name."
Okay.
And the guy said, "Your name would be Ramdas."
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Arabic,
Okay.
Abdullah.
Okay.
So he changed. Now Ramdas is still alive.
Yeah, he's still around.
87,
Yeah, sure.
86 years old.
Okay.
I have met personally, I was not looking for it, but I know there are people that are existing there. And this is like an epiphany. It was just there one, but I was too young in those days.
You're saying that there are people that have a special level of piety.
Well, they're
Yeah.
not only pious, you will never forget them.
Okay, sure.
You will never be able to
I totally agree.
take them off. This
Yeah.
will totally change your life.
Yeah, sure.
I was looking for it, wore it. The one I had, my dad even didn't know. He was taking it all for children.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of my friends didn't go home on summer vacation.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. I went to him and it wasn't a purpose, just purposely, but he was a professor of professor of philosophy, and he was just sitting like this. And I said, Assalamu alaikum, Lala. Abdullah Niazi was there. And I said, Lala, I have two friends didn't go home. And he just did. My son asked them, but their mothers are alive. A psychiatrist would have a difficulty with it. He might have an animosity in the village. There's so many possibilities. The man was just simply sitting like this. And he says, my son asked them if their mothers are alive. For them, time and space,
It's sure.
So if you have a teacher, you're a lucky person. If you're ready, they'll send you a teacher. But
Sure.
it's not a very easy thing. It's not a common thing. Out of
Sure.
maybe 50, maybe one is real guy.
Yeah, sure. But there are those
So you have to
special
maintain
people.
your own person.
Sure, sure.
Well, you're not developed,
Well-
so they will help you get there faster.
But I don't think anyone's saying you have to. I think the argument is that it's more beneficial, right?
As far as more beneficial, can they convince me that this person is closer than my jugular vein?
I don't think-
If they can convince me, then I will go to them.
But I don't think anyone.
Allah in the Quran says he's closer than my jugular vein.
But-
Why would I go far away and then have to come back?
Okay, but I don't think they're making that claim. But yeah, I think we're going to repeat last week's discussion.
Literally do such that,
But we're not talking about those things. Okay, right?
There is
Yeah.
a spiritual sound, and there is a physical sound, and there is an intellectual sound. Some people go higher, that's why you go to the most knowledgeable persons like this, who have much more, I mean, you have the same intellect, but you have not worked it out enough. See, the same is the spirituality. There are people, and which is the bigger self are our, and we just keep on, by telling lies, by telling, just now we are reading, we do that all the time. And that's why it's like down here, but there are some who has reached to that level. Why will you not go? Wasila, nobody asks, this is the very method, this is a different kind of a thing. But they really are more spiritually more pure, more pious, and therefore they are closer to what the Prophet ﷺ was. There are so many people, so I'm not saying that's why you go to them to ask the path. But if you don't want to, then you don't have to.
I mean, it's not a sin if you don't.
But really, because there are those spiritual people, and we can be, I mean, but how much you are working, how many hours of day you are working on your intellectual, the growth, how many hours of day do you guys go to gym? I know somebody who goes very early in the morning, but take care of your physical vision, but there is this whole spiritual soul, which we have to really raise to that level, and that's why Sikhallah is, so that of course there are people, of course, definitely, because you
Is
can't
that
deny
what
that.
is needed to get closer? Because some of the greatest scholars in history, the classical, the golden period of Muslims, the greatest scholars, they were never specialists. They were true what you would call polymaths. They were generalists. I mean, they were. This was hardly their full-time job.
I would disagree. I think for many of them. Okay.
Day job.
Okay. But he also paid his students so they wouldn't have to work, so they could study all day long.
But he got his money from elsewhere.
Sure, for a time. Yeah.
But getting back to the
Sure.
worshipping of the cow, just for just a comment, the Hindus, most of them, when they worship these idols, they still believe that there is one supreme being.
I'd say so,
the supreme being is unreachable, so you have to go through these lesser gods or demigods or whatever you want to call them.
I think that would be the explanation that a Brahmin would give, as opposed to others who are of a lower caste.
Yeah, lower caste, they are ignorant. A lot of them, they are ignorant. But relatively well-read Hindu, they will say there's only one God.
Sure. Yeah, the Upanishads is a very, very monotheist book. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You had a point.
I had a question. Is there any example at the time of the Prophet where the Prophet interceded or had people who were knowledgeable, like Ali radiallahu anhu or Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who interceded on behalf of the masses?
Who interceded by way of doing what?
By way of dua or by way of wasila or...
Are there cases of the Prophet worship, making dua for people? I think there's many cases of the Prophet praying for other people. In the case, so you're asking if any of the Sahaba made in terms of an intercessory type thing? I don't recall. Sorry?
In the year of the drought,
Okay.
Sayyidina Umar, when he went out to the Quran, he was asking God, and he said that it is the uncle of the Prophet.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, actually, you're right. So there'd be an example of Omar doing something along those lines. Right.
The Prophet told his daughter, do something for yourself because, Fatima, there is a hadith saying that he told Fatima to, do good deeds and pray.
Well, but that specific example, I think
I don't know, sir, maybe you remember that.
this is.
I can't do anything for you. You have to.
But why is the Prophet saying that
Okay.
to, why isn't he saying, okay, I'll be there? You
No.
know,
Okay, but
you to Jannah.
if
Why not?
if I understand the example you're giving, she's specifically asking him to provide her with a maid or an assistant, and he told her that better than that is that you say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, right? You know, the point I'm making is that the Prophet peace be upon him also does give narrations, right, about if you recite such and such surah regularly, then it will intercede for you. If you have such and such relationship with the Quran, it will intercede for you, and the Prophet himself and such will intercede for you. Meaning, it's the same body of literature, and these are generally regarded as accepted throughout most of our history. It's a recent phenomenon that they're turned down. I mean, the concern over them is that it becomes sort of like a Christian situation. Okay, that's a fair concern, right? But nobody's making that claim, though, right? Yeah.
Saint Fatima, they call it Saint
In Spain?
In Spain, they appeared in Italy or something.
Yeah, I think in Spain, but yeah.
And is that the Prophet's daughter?
No, it's somebody completely different. Yeah. Yes. One or two more points, and then we're going to take a break. Inshallah.
Question. Because we know now that the Prophet will intercede for Muslims on the Day of Judgment.
Inshallah, yeah.
And I'm assuming that the Sahaba knew that obviously as well from the narration. Are there examples where Sahaba specifically went up to him and said, "Please intercede for me"? And ask Allah for. I mean, they asked for specific things.
Well, I got a lot of stuff to look up over this course of this week.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. This is another fair question. I'll have to. It's slipping. Yes.
There's the very famous Sa'i, he's a blind man.
Okay.
He went to Rasulullah and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I can't bear this anymore. Please, do something. And then the Prophet, he said, if you can bear this, it's better for you. And the man said, I can't deal with it. The Prophet gave him this dua to say. And the dua starts out asking Allah. And then it says, but O Muhammad, I turn to you and ask for your intercession.
Subhanallah.
Well, I'm not talking about worldly things. I meant specifically for the afterlife.
For the afterlife.
And worldly, we know that they asked the Prophet to make du'as for a lot of things. I'm talking specifically because they knew that he was able to intercede in the afterlife.
There's a narrative that it's coming to mind. Yeah.
We're bringing up the
But isn't it
the peers and the people that people go to do such that do. And a lot of those people in Pakistan, as we know, ask those people to intercede for them to get them and help in the afterlife. Well, if the Sahaba knew that was the case, why would they not ask that? Unless they were so well educated, Rasulullah told them, you're going to get there by your own actions. Making a dua for you. So. Yeah,
this I'd have to go through and look for some stuff. You had a point there.
In fact, Joseph Campbell yesterday.
There is intercession in the Quran. I'll have to find the specific ayahs.
Do you think you will enter the garden of bliss without any trials and tribulations?
That's also there. That's also there too, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, intercession does not mean that you're going to be living in paradise on earth, and intercession does not mean that you're going to be living in the top level of paradise. Okay, so translation for everybody.
It's a common theme in the Quran that the Prophet would intercede on people's part.
But I'll have to find the exact ayah. I mean, there's an ayah that's even referring to this. But what is the point of contention? The point of contention is that does that mean that we get a free pass? Okay. No, we're not saying you're getting a free pass. Right. Now this is the criticism that we often give, to Christian doctrine. Okay, if I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior, does that mean I have a free pass and I can do everything wrong, right? Okay, and then within different denominations, you'll get different answers. Some will say no, some will essentially almost say yes. But we're not saying that. We're saying, you will be held to account for the choices that you made, right? I mean, the Day of Judgment itself is going to be a scary day. Okay. Right, we're not going to be able to escape that, but I mean there are even pathways for getting past that. But we are saying that there are narrations that if you do such and such things, that this will also act as intercessions for you with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala.
Before one dies, one has to make sure you're going to heaven, because if the book is closed, once the book is closed, you cannot come back.
Then you're stuck. Yeah, I mean except for those things that you can still get rewards on.
More khairat, more prayer.
Yeah.
Have to intensify this. Like somebody was saying, there was the other guy, there was some alim, a lot of people were together in Oak Brook. some young man, and he said relentless effort is to be made, and I thought that was pretty nice.
Yeah. It's I mean, last point, then we'll take a break, inshallah.
Well, actually, this could be in the break. I was just curious what these look like in other countries besides India and Pakistan. You said it happens all over.
You traveled everywhere. Let's talk about this during the break. What do the essentially these different groups look like? Okay, let us take a break, and then everybody can relax and.